In this weekly update, I have with me City Historian Bruce Daws, and we're here at the Fayetteville Area Transportation and Local History Museum. For those of you who don't know, Fort Bragg is celebrating their 100th anniversary this year, and the museum has a special exhibit in honor of that. Bruce, tell us a little bit about the exhibit that you've got going on here at the museum.
Well, it's quite large. It picks up with World War I, 1918, the same year Fort Bragg, or Camp Bragg at the time, was established, and goes through the Second World War. Fort Bragg and Fayetteville have always been very proud partners, and we are very honored to be able to put together this 100th anniversary exhibit to show our appreciation and pride in the soldiers that serve at Fort Bragg and Pope.
Okay, well, let's take a little walk and talk about some of the things that are on display here at the exhibit now. What do we have here in this room? We're starting out with World War I, correct?
Right. And both World War I and World War II, we have a large involvement of civilians. So over here we have the efforts on the home front as we chronicle the local Fayetteville, Cumberland County men that served in the First World War. Our environmental exhibit depicts a trench scene that would be typical of a trench scene, and it features Company F of the 119th Infantry, which was the Fayetteville Independent Light Infantry Company, a group of citizen soldiers that have served since 1793.
Okay, and then as we leave this room with all those great exhibits, tell us about the exhibit over here.
Well, we actually pick up on the establishment of Camp Bragg, named for Braxton Bragg, a Confederate general, but actually it was named Camp Bragg because Braxton Bragg was a brilliant field artilleryman in the war with Mexico and a native North Carolinian. The camp was established at the end of World War I. In 1921, they were seriously considering closing the post, but political lobbying allowed the post to stay open. By 1922, it gains its fort status and becomes Fort Bragg. Also in the 1920s and 1930s, we have some very interesting programs going on. The Civilian Conservation Corps is operated out of Fort Bragg. If they went to 3 different camps, it gave them some eligibility for a reserve commission, a very highly popular and successful program administered not only at Fort Bragg but at other posts across the nation.
Lots of great stuff in the exhibit, and as we were walking into this one here, we were looking at the photograph that's up there on the top, trying to figure out, okay, comparing it to Bragg now as we know it, and then Camp Bragg back then. It's just amazing to see all of these old photos and artillery and different items.
It's nice. We have a nice collection. Camp Bragg only existed from 1918 to 1922, so that's a very early photograph. Also, we have several individual photographs of buildings that were built when the post was initiated from the quartermaster's construction book. So those are also very important in terms of early Camp Bragg.
Talk about this Pope Army Airfield display right here. What are we looking at?
When Camp Bragg was established, there was a landing field there, and in 1919, Harley Pope, a World War I aviator, was navigating his way to Camp Bragg and ran low on fuel, and it caused him to make an emergency landing, and his plane crashed into the Cape Fear River. The War Department in 1919 established the landing field out there in his honor and called it Pope Field. And this depiction here takes you from the early Pope Field through the Second World War. And keep in mind that the Air Corps was an Army Air Corps up until the end of World War II, or a few years after, in 1947, when it was designated a separate branch of the service as the United States Air Force.
I love seeing all of these old uniforms. Now, where do you actually get the items that you put in your exhibit?
Some of the items are in our private collection. Others, citizens will loan or donate, and we are always very thankful for the local community that comes forth with wonderful artifacts that we can display.
And as we come down this final hallway, we're seeing like postcards and different mementos back in that era. And then on this wall, we just have tons and tons of stories that people that visit the museum can come and see. Tell us a little bit about those.
In 1940, overnight, as we were building the Army up for national defense, there was a population explosion where Fort Bragg far exceeds the population of the civilian community. And as such, they're coming into town in large numbers. They're arriving by car, train, plane. They need entertainment. Fayetteville reaches out to the soldiers. We had a blue law at the time where you couldn't go to the movie theaters on Sundays. And the mayor worked very aggressively to get that blue law changed to allow the soldiers to come into town and have some wholesome recreation. The USOs were established. We had several USOs. The old Hay Street Methodist Manse was turned into a soldier's townhome. And of course we had the bars like the Town Pump that were quite active during the Second World War. And there are so many stories. This is a story of Fort Bragg and the civilian community coming together.
So how long will all of this be on display here at the museum?
This exhibit will last about a year.
Okay, so I would encourage you to come downtown to the Fayetteville Area Transportation and Local History Museum to see all of the displays and exhibits giving honor to Fort Bragg, who is celebrating their 100th anniversary this year.
And sure, if I could just say one more thing, we're doing this in conjunction with the 18th Airborne Corps Command Historian and the Airborne Special Operations Museum, and promoting the two exhibits, or cross-promoting them. We noticed that this weekend, many people that visited the Airborne and Special Operations Museum to look at a similar exhibit were here. So we're, again, very happy to be in that joint relationship with the Army.
Thank you so much, Bruce.